station in talk radio, Liberty Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio, America's libertarian voice, broadcasting from our studio in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to around the world. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, and this is your antidote to popular talk radio. Today, we're pleased to have as our guest is Bill Redpath. He's the treasurer of FairVote.org. FairVote is a non-partisan, non-profit organization that seeks to make democracy fair, functional, and more representative. They research and propose common sense changes to strengthen our democracy and engage all voices in every vote, that every vote counts in every election. Let's hear what is being done to truly make America great again. I wonder where we've heard that before. During our live broadcast, we invite you to call with your questions or comments, 646-652-4620. Remember to press the one button so we know that you want to break in. Bill, welcome to our program.
Joe, thank you for having me.
Okay.
It's an honor to be here.
That's great. Bill, you're in a shadow. I see half your face.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Can you turn a light on so we can?
I turned the light on. Let me hold on for 1 second.
Okay. Thank you.
Alter the lighting. And that probably looks better.
Yeah, that's better. You're a little dark. You look like you're.
Okay, well, that's going to be about all I can do right now.
Okay, that's fine. We can do that. Before you only had half a face.
Okay. Well,
okay.
I hope I improve matters by making it a full face. I don't know.
Well, Bill, yeah, I'll tell you probably the one subject that or actions that our government takes, or position our government takes, is regarding war. I mean, I hate that so much. I mean, all of our involvements around the world create many of the problems that we have now, exacerbate our deficit situation. You name it, I hate it all. I think we should all stay home. And like my mother used to say, if people would only stay home and mind their own business, the world would be a better place. She would have been a great President of the United States. She had very little education, but she had a lot of common sense. But the second thing is our voting system. Second to war is our voting system. We pride ourselves of being a free country, the freest country in the world. We have one of the worst and most obstructive voting systems in the world. I mean, even third world countries, although they may have dictators and they're corrupt, have easier voting or more logical voting system than ours. When are you going to do something about it, Bill?
Well, it's difficult. It's difficult to make changes in this society. I mean, societal change is slow by its very nature. And of course, I got into FairVote through my work in the Libertarian Party. And my frustration, first time I ran for public office was for the Virginia House of Delegates in 1993. We have odd year elections for state offices in Virginia. And after that was over, I went home on election night 1993, and I sat down and I was despondent at my showing after I'd worked so hard. And I think I said 25 times, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do. And I spoke with Richard Winger, editor of Ballot Access News, ballot-access.org, and he said, well, you ought to contact Rob Ritchie over at what was then Citizens for Proportional Representation. And I did, and I've been associated. Well, it got changed to the Center for Voting and Democracy, and then the name got changed to FairVote. And what FairVote does is advocates, and actually we sort of view ourselves as a wholesaler, so to speak, of information to people who then will take action around the United States. But what do we support? I think at the core, we support proportional representation for legislative elections in the United States. There is no reason we have to have single member election districts in the United States. We could have multi-member districts. People would have more choices, more effective choices at the ballot box.
Bill, excuse me, let me interrupt for a second, please. What do you mean by that? By single?
right now, for instance, let's take, I don't know what, I'm pretty sure you have single member districts. Not all states have single member districts, but let me give you an example. Congress is composed solely of single member districts. That's not in the U.S. Constitution. That is from a 1960s law. I believe it was passed in 1966, 66 to 68, and through there, that mandated single member legislative districts for U.S. House of Representatives elections.
Oh, you mean
so,
one person gets in?
Yes,
You know, they win by one vote.
Right.
They represent everyone.
One person represents the district.
Right.
That's it. And what that means is that there are a lot of wasted votes. A lot of wasted votes for people who don't get elected, and frankly, excess votes for people who win are wasted votes as well, really.
Right.
And so that is what props up. It is that election system, single member plurality voting.
Right.
Single member election districts, person with the most votes wins. Single member plurality voting is really what props up the two major parties in the United States. Because so many people go into the voting booth and feel that they have to vote for the lesser of two evils.
Right.
They have to vote strategically, or you've wasted your vote.
Right.
We can talk about that wasted vote syndrome later. But if you have to have a single winner race, we favor ranked choice voting, and sometimes it's called instant runoff voting for single winner races, where people rank their candidates. And how it works is people would rank their candidates. This is my first choice. This is my second choice. This is my third choice candidate, as many or as few as each voter likes. And then they look at the results. If somebody has a majority of first choice votes, that person wins. They have a majority of first choice votes. But if not, they eliminate candidates from the bottom up, transferring each voter's vote to their next choice candidate until one of the candidates, has a majority of non-exhausted votes. And there is a referendum in Maine, actually an initiative, I should say, in Maine that's going to be on the ballot, Election Day 2016, for the state of Maine to adopt ranked choice voting for all their elections, except for President of the United States, and there may be some local level offices. But anyway, but you're talking governor, U.S. Senate, U.S. House, state Senate, state House. All of them would be decided through ranked choice voting, and that initiative, I think, stands a decent chance of passing in Maine in November. We also favor some other things. We've worked, although we don't head up the effort, we've worked for national popular vote for President of the United States, which is a multi-state compact that would kick into effect once enough states pass it that they would control at least 270 electoral votes that's needed to win the presidency. And what the compact says is that each state would cast their electoral votes for the national popular vote winning presidential candidate. There are other things, right to vote, putting right to vote in the U.S. Constitution, and other electoral reforms that FairVote is involved in. But the biggest ones would be, I would say, ranked choice voting and multi-member legislative districts elected through some form of proportional representation.
What is your opinion of the type of voting? I forgot what they call it, whereby you vote you vote yes or no for everyone on the ballot. For example, if one person walks in and says, "Well, I want to vote for the Republican against the Democrat," and let's assume that the third party is a libertarian in this hypothetical situation, and the person says, "Well, you know, this guy seems to be a good guy too. I'll vote for him too." Now, the next guy that walks in, let's assume in the whole population is 2 votes, right? And now the second person walks in, he says, "Well, I don't like the Republican, but I do like the Democrat. Yeah, the Libertarian seems to be a pretty sharp guy. You know, I like their principles too. I vote for the Libertarian." Now, in that composite, you have 1 vote for Republican, 1 vote for the Democrat, 2 votes for the Libertarian. Libertarian wins the election. I mean, to me, that makes a lot more sense than what we're doing now.
Well, I think what you are talking about is approval voting.
Okay.
And there are people I know and respect who like approval voting, and I think approval voting is better than the plurality voting system we have now. I agree with that. I think, however, that approval voting in a highly contested, I think there are situations that are better for approval voting than other situations. And I think ranked choice voting out in highly contested public elections would work better because it's less susceptible, in my view, to strategic voting than is approval voting. because, and there's evidence of this in the past, where there was a system called Buckland voting, which, don't ask me exactly the mechanics of Buckland voting, although I think I could spit it out in a minute or so. But there was a situation where people could vote for more than one candidate, but very few people did. Something like 86% of the people in elections in, I believe, Alabama back early in the 20th century, I think, where they used Buckland voting, only voted for one candidate because of the risk that they would harm their most favored candidate by casting a vote for another candidate.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I think that in a situation, for instance, in the Libertarian Party, to elect the Libertarian National Committee and to elect the Judicial Committee of the Libertarian Party, approval voting is used. You know, I think in a circumstance like that, where yes, people want to get elected to the LNC. I've been elected twice now. Well, I've served, but when my current LNC term is over in 2018, I will have served over 19 years total on the Libertarian National Committee. But I think those elections, they're not highly contested elections. People get up, they speak, please elect me to the National Committee. They have a minute or two or three to talk about what they see for the party, what they would like the party to accomplish. If you elect me to the LNC, I will try to do that. But I think in a highly partisan public election, particularly when people have more time to think. I mean, these are elections where the votes are cast immediately after people self-select themselves to run for the committee, and it all happens in an hour or two, the whole process. But in a situation where it's more highly contested and people have time to think about their vote and think about the strategy behind voting, I don't think approval voting would work nearly as well in public elections as ranked choice voting.
Yeah. Well, apparently, I don't know what the process is for the voting for presidents for the Libertarian Party when they had their convention. I was not there this year, and I was dismayed, unfortunately, that Gary Johnson won, because I thought he was the weakest of all the candidates from a libertarian perspective. And but I understand that there were many people there were not even libertarians. I mean, I didn't even understand the process that they really went through. You know, who was eligible to vote? You know, of course, people who showed up were eligible to vote. And I heard that many of the people were not even libertarians themselves. They were Republicans or registered for other parties.
That's news to me, Joe. I was not familiar with this, and to the best of my knowledge, that's not so.
That's not so. Okay, that makes me feel better.
That is not so, to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't believe that people have to be members of the national party. It's up to the state parties of the Libertarian Party to decide who the delegates are. So there were probably some people who weren't national party members, but were state party members, and or the delegations could be. But there was no there had been rumored takeover of the Libertarian Party by non-libertarians or Republicans trying to use our ballot access to put a candidate up against Donald Trump, and that most certainly was not the case.
Yeah.
But how the process worked, by the way, was it was a runoff election. Both the president and vice president, they were elected separately. They were not elected as a ticket, and both of them went to a second round. And it takes a majority to win. And actually, Governor Johnson and Governor Weld both achieved 49 and a fraction % of the vote on the first ballot, and then won on the second ballot for president and vice president, respectively.
Yeah, I heard and watched the town hall meeting they had on CNN with Wells and Gary Johnson, and unfortunately, I thought they did the Libertarian Party a disservice. I was incredibly disappointed in their responses. Almost like milquetoast, almost apologetic, weren't very firm, and they gave so much credit to Hillary Clinton. It was disgusting. They almost endorsed Hillary Clinton there when they asked questions about her. And if I was an outsider looking in, I'd say, these guys are nothing burgers. You know, I'm not going to bother with them at all. I'm going to go for the mainstream candidate. They offered me absolutely nothing. And that's the way I felt. I don't know if you heard that, and I don't know. I would love to hear your perspective if you had an opportunity to listen to that.
I saw part of it. I DVR'd it. I have not watched the whole program. Part of it was due to an executive committee meeting for the Libertarian Party that was at 10 o'clock Eastern time, and that was, the town hall was supposed to be over then, but I think it actually went to about 10:15.
Yeah.
I did support Governor Johnson and Governor Well for their positions. I know that some people, so I really haven't seen the whole thing. I can't comment. I did see part of it, and I understand your criticism. I would there were some things I would have phrased differently if I'd been on there. I do think they present our most credible to the outside world.
Right.
To the people who not maybe for people inside the party, but for people outside the party, looking at the Libertarian Party and trying to decide whether they're going to vote for a presidential ticket or not. I think they present the most credible ticket. Should they present a stronger version and more, and be more critical of people like President Obama and Hillary Clinton? Yes. I think that it's not adequate to just say that President Obama's a nice guy. He may very well think he's doing the right thing for the nation, but of course we all think he's not. That his policies are doing exactly the opposite, and that has to be brought up. It's not a matter of him being a nice guy. It's what are his policies doing to the United States, and libertarians certainly think his policies are doing great harm to this nation.
It just seemed that it came across mamby-pamby. They weren't very strong in their convictions. They were espousing some, excellent positions. Their positions were well taken, but they didn't have to have the courage of their conviction when they were speaking. And if I was undecided after listening to them, I would still be undecided. And I think that's what just absolutely frustrated me. I wish they had not have done that.
I know there are a lot of people who think that was an opportunity lost, and I do what I can. I'm working on ballot access right now. That's what I'm involved in, and a lot of libertarians are involved in, and we're trying to successfully complete 50 states plus DC ballot access, which is not a done deal yet, by the way. We have a lot of petitioning to go. Fortunately, the Illinois petition drive ended yesterday, June 27, 2016, and it looked like the number was about 53,000 gross signatures. We needed 25,000 valid. So things are looking pretty good for us getting on the ballot in Illinois. And right now, I'd say that it is likely, but not certain, that the Johnson-Weld ticket will be on the ballot in all 50 states in D.C.
Are there any states in which the Libertarian Party will not be posted, will not be on the ballot?
Well, right now, no. We're still alive to get on the ballot in all 50 states and D.C. for the presidential ticket. Now, the rules are different for other offices on the ballot. A lot of states make it much more difficult for lower-level offices to get on the ballot. And so we don't have universal ballot access for all of our candidates, but the presidential ticket is likely to be on the ballot in all 50 states plus D.C., and will certainly be on in the high 40s at least, but we're still working and hoping for 50 states plus D.C.
Yeah. Why has not, in your opinion, the mainstream media included the Libertarian Party in any of the dialogue? It's always an exception, a special program, and after they spend thousands of hours with the Republican Democrat, then they allot this half hour to the Libertarian Party, at 10 o'clock on Friday night or something. Why are they? Is anyone working on making the Libertarian Party or pushing the Libertarian to be more inclusive in the dialogue when they talk about Hillary, when they talk about Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump? They should also be talking about Gary Johnson, but he's never mentioned. Never.
I don't know. I don't think he's never mentioned, and he's getting a lot more mentions. I mean, really, the media this year for the Libertarian Party presidential ticket is much greater than at any time in the past. I just saw him like in the Wall Street Journal the other day, yesterday or the day before. I go to WSJ.com, And there's Gary Johnson's picture on the homepage of WSJ.com. And it's, election 2016 story or something like that. A picture of Gary Johnson. But Joe, it all comes back to our voting system. I mean, that is it, because people perceive the press doesn't cover us like they do the R's and D's, because they perceive that we can't win, that we certainly haven't won in the past, and they perceive that we can't. And it's not issues, and it's not policy driven. It's horse race driven. It's election driven. It's entertainment. The Donald Trump phenomenon proves that. So ultimately, this is simply the fact that we don't get the media coverage that the R's and D's do is one more manifestation of the problems of the voting system in the United States, propping up the two major parties. I will say this, I think a lot of it has to do with the so-called wasted vote syndrome, and that's what instant runoff voting or ranked choice voting addresses, where you have done away with the so-called wasted vote syndrome. And then in that circumstance, because a lot more people would consider voting for a libertarian candidate, I think that would much more open up press coverage, and it would also mean, I think, less debate exclusion. I mean, for instance, I've been a candidate for office 6 times. The last time I ran, last 2 times, was for U.S. House of Representatives in the 10th Congressional District in Virginia in 2010 and 2014. I was U.S. Senate candidate in 2008, governor candidate in 2001. But there are simply venues that always have, like the Loudoun County Chamber of Commerce, the Fairfax County Chamber of Commerce. They exclude minor party candidates, always just the Republican and the Democrat.
Right.
That's it.
I had the same experience.
And so there's a lot of institutional backing for the status quo. I mean, believe me, one of the biggest opponents, if we ever begin making progress to changing the voting system in the United States and make progress toward having proportional representation, one of the biggest opponents is going to be the Chamber of Commerce. I guarantee it. The business interests are going to work hard to try to prevent change to the status quo in the United States.
Yeah. Now, where is FairVote right now? I mean, what kind of progress have you been making, and what's the most significant progress that you've made so far?
We've made a lot of progress in terms of funding. I think the budget over I'm going to say for FairVote now is, I don't have the figures in front of me, is now up $2-3 million a year now. I mean, it used to be stuck in the 6 digits, and we've had a tremendous, I would say, quadrupling over the last 2 to 3 years. The revenues for FairVote have quadrupled due to more support from foundations, more support from individuals. We do not take taxpayer funds from any entity, mind you. But it really, I think that there's a lot happening. The Maine vote coming up is huge. If that passes, that will be it may not be treated as a major story by the press immediately, but it will be a foot in the door, and to have a whole state go to ranked choice voting would be huge. So we have definitely made progress at FairVote in the number of people we have on staff and the programs that we are instituting and the way we're able to advance them more and more in society. Because most people just don't, I guess probably most people think most nations, most democracies around the world vote the same way we do, but they don't. They have completely different voting systems, a multi-party system that is enabled by proportional representation. And I think, frankly, I mean, I hear lots of people talk about the 2-party system and how great it is. I respectfully disagree. It provides very little choice to many voters. In Virginia, to give you an example, last year in Virginia, in 2015, we had the entire Virginia House of Delegates was up for re-election, 100 single-member districts. Of those 100 single-member districts, 62 had only one candidate on the ballot, not one challenger, one candidate. And it's not even reported by the press. They'll talk about the hot race over here. Oh, this is a close race over here. But the big story is 62 of these 100 people in the Virginia House of Delegates walked in with literally no competition on the ballot. If you had multi-member districts, it wouldn't be that way.
Yeah. Well, you know, I enjoy listening to the House of Commons on cable, only because there's such a wide range of representation and inclusion of parties, many of whom are disagreeing, you know, with the prime minister, and if they don't like what he says, they'll boo him right then and there.
I think it's great too.
Yeah, and ours seems to be so sanitized, where when the president gets up, if someone sneezes, I mean, they'll be asked to leave the room, and it's so disingenuous when people are running for office, whether they be Republican or Democrat, you know, talk about the people, for liberty, you know, justice for all, and then they support the system that is contrary to what they're talking about. And then once they're in, they solidify that system and they make it even worse. And they codify themselves right into the position and eliminate everyone else. And I don't think people realize that, you know, we actually think as Americans, well, we don't think anymore, but I mean, we perceive as Americans that we are the freest nation in the world, that we have choice in our elections and all that. And the facts couldn't be further from the truth, in that most countries are a lot more democratic in the way in which they elect people than the United States. But if you mention that to someone, they would think you're nuts.
Oh, yeah. I agree. And the ballot access laws are a good example. You talk to foreigners, you say, well, we have to get 25,000 valid signatures to get a statewide slate on the ballot in Illinois. What? I mean, in most nations, it's easy to get on the ballot. Now, I will say that in some, it's easy to get on the ballot. I believe they have a system in London or in England that I heard. I heard this when I was at a FairVote event in London back in 2007. And they made it easy for a candidate to get on the ballot, but they had to make a monetary payment if they got below a certain percentage of the vote, 3% or something like that. They had to make a payment to the government if they got below a certain percentage of the vote after getting on the ballot. Yeah. No, our system is really geared, perhaps not intentional, perhaps intentionally actually, the avoidance of issues and the very low level of public debate, both in terms of quality and quantity, frankly. I give you an example. I was utterly astounded by this. We had Robert Sarvis, who was the Libertarian candidate for governor in 2013 here in Virginia. Virginia and New Jersey are the only states that have gubernatorial elections in the year after a presidential election. And in 2013, he made big news. Actually, it was national news. He got 6 and a fraction % of the vote against Terry McAuliffe and Ken Cuccinelli, the Republican and Democrat. It was a three-way race for governor. And I asked Rob Sarvis after it was over, I said, let me ask you a question. Did the subject of legalization of gambling, you just ran for governor, did the subject of legalization of gambling, which is not legal in Virginia except for charitable causes, of course the lottery is legal, but otherwise illegal, did that ever come up? Because you've got legal gambling rising in so many states. There's a casino just across the Potomac River that's about to open in Maryland on the south side of the D.C. metro area. And it seems like a big issue. Did this ever come up at all in the campaign? He said no, except for one person who privately asked him a question about that. And otherwise, it never even came up. I went to a Loudoun County Chamber of Commerce breakfast last fall for the Virginia House of Delegates. I wasn't running, but I was helping someone who was. And just the narrow breadth of the questions. Even I know Chamber of Commerce is going to be business oriented, but frankly, there was a bias in the questions. There was an inherent bias in favor of big government and government spending. And we're going through tough times here in Northern Virginia. Well, I live in Northern Virginia and drive around. It doesn't look like tough times in Northern Virginia to me. But you hear that belly aching at the chamber, and then that's the premise of the question, and then of course it's a leading question toward more government spending that business can get in on. frankly, in the single-member plurality elections, there's a lot of issue avoidance because they want to, the candidates want to alienate, they want to alienate as few voters as possible so they can win these single-member district elections.
Right. Well, the comment that I've gotten to absolutely despise is that, well, you have to vote. It's your responsibility to vote. And you hear this from the politicians as well. It's your responsibility. It's your constitutional responsibility to vote. And what people don't realize, no, it's your constitutional responsibility to dissent, not to vote. If you don't like the system, you don't like who's running, you shouldn't vote, you should dissent. And we had this all backwards. But yet we've been brainwashed into thinking that, well, we have to vote. If there was Adolf Hitler running for office, well, we have to vote. No, we don't. We have to dissent. We have to stay away from the polls. When I ran for Congress here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, back in 2000, the general election in 2000, I was excluded from a major debate here in Tulsa, and I was on the ballot, the whole bit, and it was sponsored by the League of Women Voters, of all people, the League of Women Voters. And I called them, and I said, why am I excluded from this? She says, oh, we didn't make that decision. The radio station did. I said, the radio station? You're the sponsors. They said, oh, we have no say in it. I called the radio station, and they said, that's bunk. We don't care who's on there. We're just televising, we're just broadcasting it. They can have King Kong on there. We don't care. That's not our decision. It's their decision. It's their debate. And they were absolutely right. And I said, how bad have things gotten with the in the United States electoral system, where even now the League of Women Voters, the organization that fought, that stood in the streets when women were not allowed out of the kitchen, in those days, walking the streets down Manhattan, in downtown Manhattan, lobbying to give the woman the right to vote, and then they leave me out of all organizations, and I think that was a low spot in my libertarian career. Yeah,
there were. I think the League of Women Voters there were a number of fora that I was invited to, and I believe the League of Women Voters was associated with them in Northern Virginia in 2014 when I was running for U.S. House. But no, that's a low blow when the League of Women Voters begins excluding candidates from the ballot. There's no question about that.
Yeah. Well, Bill, we're just about out of time. I'd like to give you the last couple of minutes to wrap things up and to inform our listeners of your organization and how they may reach you and participate.
Well, I'd like to tell people about two organizations, one being the Libertarian Party, and I imagine you told them about that, but the Libertarian Party is the third largest political party in the United States, and certainly the largest and most successful third party in the United States. And we've been around since 1971, and the website is lp.org for the Libertarian Party of the United States. Again, that's lp.org. And the presidential ticket is johnsonweld.com this year, and but plenty of information about our other candidates can be found on lp.org in 2016 and any other year for that matter. With respect to FairVote, the website is fairvote.org. And again, we're the leading electoral reform organization in the United States, working to make every vote count, and to do that through ranked choice voting for single winner races is what we advocate, and multi-member districts, something even more important, to bring more voices and more effective choices for people at the ballot box, to promote multi-member districts for legislatures elected through some sort of proportional representation, and of that, probably choice voting would be the best, which is sometimes called single transferable vote. So that's and again, fairvote.org is the website for FairVote.
Well, Bill, I'd like to thank you for all the work that you do, and thank you very much for being on our program. I hope you will accept our invitation to return at a later date and give us an update.
Absolutely. Would love to do that, Joe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Folks, this is the end of today's program. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. You can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends, and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, as my wife would say, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. Until next time, folks, this is Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well, stay tuned.